Viewpoint since the World War II. Probably the most severe economic crisis. We are seeing throughout Europe high levels of unemployment. We are seeing public deficit. We are seeing many young people. We are seeing many SMEs which are being affected by the crisis. And we are thinking of what should be the strategy. Do we need? What is the best way to come out of this crisis? Everybody's thinking more and more about industry. Some years ago, people used to say the best industrial policy is that which does not exist. Today, we see that the countries that are doing better out of the crisis are those who have not dismantled their industry, who have productive bases. So today we wanted to have a discussion with policymakers, a discussion with very senior representatives from industry. In the afternoon there are going to be technical workshops on finance, on innovation, on skills. And the European Commission has launched a consultation paper. Our idea is to present in September the new industrial strategy. What should be the strategy to create growth, to create jobs, to make Europe come out of the crisis? And we do not have the secret remedy. But we know that there are a certain number of areas in which we need to work. And some of them were mentioning this morning. There was a very strong call for innovation. Innovative companies are the ones who can develop new products, new services that can create jobs, that can create growth. So Europe is very strong in innovation. We have some of the most innovative companies in the world. So what should we do in terms of innovation? Many speakers were mentioning access to finance. How do we ensure that our companies can have access to finance? Because access to finance gives the possibility for investment, gives the possibility to create companies, gives the possibility to develop. Internationalization, very important. In a moment when Europe is not growing, there are many opportunities outside Europe. What should be the policies towards internationalization? There has been also a discussion on entrepreneurship. Europe has less and less entrepreneurs than the rest of the world. When you ask a young people, do you want to create your own company? 75% of the Chinese say yes. Less than 40% of Europeans say, I am interested. So how do we promote in Europe more entrepreneurship? We discussed this morning, and we will continue discussing some key sectors. The green economy, the opportunities of construction, the opportunities of renewable energy, the opportunities of the digital agenda, electromobility, health industries, space, tourism. All these policies are run in DG Enterprise. And this is why we are hosting this conference, because we would like to get the input so that in the industry strategy that we will present in September, we can put on the table some of these ideas. And this is why, as I was saying, we have launched this consultation. Consultation is in our website, and we are asking for input. But what we wanted to do this afternoon with you is to share more in detail some of these areas. I am the Director General of DG Enterprise. I am also the SME envoy, because we have also mentioned the importance of SMEs as a key tool for growth. SMEs represent 85% of all the new jobs created in Europe have been created by the small and medium-sized companies. and they are the backbone of our economy. They are the engines of growth. They are the companies that can create, that can get us out of the crisis. They have been very severely hit by the crisis, but they can also bring us out. So we will have, and we have a plan in relation to SMEs. We have the small business sector. But to go into detail in all these policies, I am surrounded here by all the directors. And I want to introduce them to you because they will go into detail in the areas of the different policies. So it is not ideological, but on my far right, I have Mrs. Renate Weissenhorn. She is in charge of standardization. And you know how important standards are for Europe. Standards are an element of competitiveness, an element of growth. Europe is developing a new standards policy. We want to develop European standards, make them faster, but make them also become world standards. Because if you are able to win the battle of the standards, you can win also the battle of competitiveness. So she will be presenting our policies on standardization. Then on my right side, immediately next to me, is Mr. Didier Herbert. He is in charge of international affairs. He is also in charge of the new programs, the budget that we are devoting for the future. So the COSME program for SMEs, competitiveness, innovation, and he is also leading a lot of internal work in terms of coordinating the different policies. So I think he will be able to provide you the new developments on our programs and also our strategy in the international area, what we call the missions for growth, going with companies to find opportunities outside. On my left is Mr. Carlo Pettinelli. He is the director in charge of innovation, and he is in charge of all the innovation policy, so clusters, public procurement, key enabling technologies, all the strategy on innovation, and he's also in charge of electromobility, which we have identified as a very important area. So all the issues linked to the car industry, the electric car industry, but also in other sectors, like the shipbuilding industry. We are launching the leadership initiative, and also the industries of defense, because the industries of defense can also play a role to make Europe come out of the crisis. On his left-hand side, we have Mr. Caballero. Mr. Caballero is the leading economist in our DG Enterprise. He is in charge of industrial policy. And you can ask him what it means. Because some people say, what does it mean, industrial policy? Well, he is in charge of preparing the paper for this industrial strategy, and we are very keen in getting all the views so that we have this new industrial policy strategy in place. And we have also Mr. Catina, who is the head of unit in charge of the key enabling technologies. Key enabling technologies have been identified as a key element of competitiveness, and he will share with you how we are going to move forward. So we are, yeah. And last but not least, I say hello to our friend Jeremy Rifkin. You have listened to him. More than a facilitator, I would say he is the inspirer of our work. He has identified the role which the European Union can play leading the third industrial revolution. He has put on the table many of the ideas that we are discussing today, but more than that, he said at the end of his speech, it's not so much about ideas. What we have to do now is implementation. Implementation, implementation, implementation. What do we do to execute these policies? And I think he can stay with us some minutes also. So he will be also sharing with us, maybe. He will be joining us. We'll let him here. And if you have questions for him, he will be also available. Please, please. We are making space. Fine. Last but not least, I think we may also be having Mr. Tajani, who is also in 2 minutes. He will be with you because he wants also to address and to have the opportunity to discuss with you. So I think we have a very, very heavy agenda. We don't want it to make it heavy. We want to make it light because the future of industrial policy is not the heavy, old-fashioned industry. It's rather modern, looking at the new industrial revolution. But I want to finish my welcoming words with a final reflection. I think, as it was said today, there is a lot of Euro-pessimism, a lot of Euro-skepticism. Many people are saying, oh, there is this economic crisis and the financial crisis and the unemployment. And I think what we have to do is to provoke a mind shift. I think the crises always are opportunities. Progress always comes when confronted with a crisis. Humankind transforms this crisis into an opportunity. We have a wonderful opportunity, and we have no alternative. Jeremy said it this morning. We have no plan B. What we need to do is to implement now a new vision for the future, and this vision has to be based on this concept of the third industrial revolution. Coming back to the real economy, coming back to the SMEs, coming back to innovation, coming back to the policies and to the industries that can deliver, that can create jobs, that can create growth. And from a situation where you have seen many companies, many citizens victims of the crisis, empower them so that they can become the key players to come out of the crisis. I think this is what we are trying to do. It is not easy, but today is a very important, it's a small step, but it's a very important step, because with this conference, we are launching a process which will be based on the contributions. We have an open website, we are going to receive many ideas, and I want to ask you to come back in the autumn, because I think we will be able to share with you, we still have to see when we do it, September, October, the results of this consultation process, and we will present a strategy, this industrial strategy, to make Europe lead in this third industrial revolution, because, as it was also said this morning, this is not just a European problem. This is a global issue, and this is also an opportunity to lead the policies that can make Europe lead the rest of the world coming out of the crisis. So this is what I wanted to say as a way of introduction. But having said that, I don't know if Jeremy would like to say a few words, or we listen to Vice President Tajani before with your agreement. Yeah?
English, French, Spanish, Italian. There are a lot of Italian journalists. I was journalist for 20 years. Thank you for coming. Thank you for your participation at this very important meeting. As I said this morning, this is the beginning of the third industrial revolution. Please, I want to thank Mr. Jeremy Riffing, because for me it's important today to open the debate on the third industrial revolution. My position is, it's possible to beat the crisis with a strong strategy, of course, against the public debt, but in the same time, it's important to work in favor of real economy. Real economy is internal market, is industry, and 23 millions of small and medium-sized companies in Europe. Not only sacrifices. Only I think it's possible to do a dream for our entrepreneurs, for our people. And we with a strong policy in favor of this strategy. For us, it's impossible to compete with India, China, United States, Brazil on quantity. But it's possible to compete and to win on quality. I was last week in the United States of America, in Mexico, in Colombia, for a mission for growth, after other mission for growth in Brazil, Uruguay, Chile, Argentina. Not trade mission, industrial mission for growth. The first question in White House, for example, what's happening in Europe? It's a disaster. My answer was in Spanish, euro no está muerto, no estamos enterrados. Es más eficaz en español que en inglés. Really? Really? Yes, of course. In front page, every day, of course. Demonstration against the government, demonstration in Athens, demonstration in Italy. But there are a lot of problems, of course. But there are also 23 million of small and medium-sized companies. For this, I am optimistic. And after, in the end of this mission for growth, everybody in USA, in Colombia, in Brazil was happy. Our entrepreneurs, but also American entrepreneurs, Mexican entrepreneurs, Colombian entrepreneurs, because they know now Europe. We know Europe, but now it's important to back this strategy in favor of real economy. But what is quality? Quality is green economy. For us, it's possible to compete at a high level. Automotive sector, tourism sector, and space sector, key enabling technology sector, construction sector, tourism. I am also commissioner for tourism. But why for me tourism is very important? Because around the tourism we have textile sector, transport sector, agri-food sector, transport sector, I said, a lot of sector around the tourism. Also green economy, construction sector. What's happening in Spain? If construction sector will go up, more tourism, more jobs. For this, I will present 3 action plan. The first on automotive sector, in the end of the CARSI 21 high-level group. The second on construction. As I said yesterday during a dinner with our friend Jeremy Rifkin, the debate on construction sector is very, very interesting. For the future, the sector is the shipbuilding sector. The green policy, also for the future, also for the shipbuilding sector. It's important to change. But during the last interview, a journalist said, but it's very difficult to change our real economy. Your ideas is a dream for the 2050. Of course, a strategy is a long-term strategy, but the implementation, the beginning of the implementation of this strategy is yesterday. Why we are working in favor of electric cars, why we are working in favor of construction, why we are working with leadership 15 and now leadership 2020. The implementation is for yesterday, for tomorrow. But within this strategy, we want to achieve the final target, but we have other targets tonight, tomorrow morning, tomorrow in the afternoon, next week. Why I underline it's important for us to put the money within European Investment Bank, because with 10 billion euros is possible with guarantees to back a lot of small and medium-sized companies. 10 billion euro is really 180 billion euro with venture capital, with the implementation of our rules on delay of payments. It's possible to back small and medium-sized companies. If it's possible to reduce our red tape, it's possible to back our SMEs, but also it's possible to back new investments coming from abroad. I'm totally in favor, I'm not protectionist, but level playing field. It's impossible to play soccer here, 11 against 11, and in China, 9 against 13. Public procurement is very important, also with a green package within our public procurement. This is possible also for tomorrow. My strategy for construction, I will present this action plan in the meeting of a construction sector in Istanbul in 3 weeks. I will present the action plan for automotive sector in 2 weeks. The final target, of course, is the green economy. The first target is a greener economy. But I am not a fundamentalist. But I think without this strategy, it's very difficult to back an industrial sector in Europe, to back real economy. Of course, step by step. I will continue in France. Moi, je pense qu'il faut partager, parce que seulement, on ne peut pas parler seulement la langue anglaise. Je m'excuse, mais avec les anglophones, mais il faut aussi aider les autres qui ne parlent pas l'anglais. Voilà pourquoi je pense qu'il faut aider d'une façon intelligente l'industrie européenne. Voilà pourquoi il faut avoir une stratégie. Et je suis très...
strategy, and I'm very pleased today that President Barroso has set out a path for Europe's industrial policy. He said some very interesting things about state aid as well, and the pact which must be adhered to. So that's a modern industrial policy, and we can win our fight if we try to go for quality rather than quantity. This isn't just a pipe dream. This isn't just something that's going to stay on paper. It won't just be a dead letter. We really need to implement this strategy, though, and therefore I'm trying to open the doors of the European Commission. Today's debate isn't just a debate for the benefit of the press and citizens. The aim of the debate is to try and make sure that we have a good strategy in place, and we want to do that by listening. We want to listen to important figures and economists. Important economists who will give us ideas. We've had a conference today with major industrialists, and we have a European policy with European politicians as well, and there will be debate carrying on in the afternoon. And what we want to do is listen. We want to discuss ideas, because I'm not going to take decisions locked up in my office in the Berlaymont. I'm not a teacher, but I have to take decisions, and these are shared decisions, and they must be shared by citizens and by member states. I must decide on a policy to develop Europe's economy, but before I take a decision, I want to present ideas and I want to have an open debate. But before I conclude that debate, I really want to listen. I want to listen to high-level experts. I also want to hear from small-scale entrepreneurs as well. So that's why we are waiting to hear from European citizens, and we want to hear what they have to say in our consultation. I'd like to thank my Directorate General also for the work they're doing. But as I was saying, the European Commission is opening its doors. This is really the opposite of what is sometimes said of us. People talk about bureaucracy and everybody shut up inside the Berlaymont, inside Castle Berlaymont, but now the doors are open, and they're open to the press, and they are open to the most intelligent amongst us. They may come from, say, the United States, a very free country where one can discuss things. But we have discussed these sacrifices that we must make for months. But we haven't talked enough about the work which we need to put into growth. There's no point making sacrifices if we don't have a growth policy. Take Greece, what's happening there? I'm an optimist, as I said in my speech, and I will defend Greece. Greece is part of our history. It's a European frontier. We can't just leave them high and dry. But of course, sacrifices have to be made. But we will show Greece that there's also a strategy in place for growth in that country, and that we stand alongside our brothers there. We don't want to forget where Europe was born. We studied all of this at school. We know about Greeks' great battles to defend Europe against invaders, Persian invaders, for example. That's our history. We mustn't forget that. Historia magistra vitae is what we say in Latin. And when we draw up policies, therefore, we need to bear history in mind, and it would be a mistake to leave Greece, a mistake for us and for them. If they were to leave the euro, it would be a complete disaster for the Greek economy, and it would not be a good thing for us, neither politically nor economically. Thanks to the single market, I think Europe can win. Germany at the moment has the strongest economy in Europe, but if we don't have a single market, what will happen? Or what would happen in Germany, for example? There'll be a risk to the great German economy if we don't have a single market in place. So that's why it's important to make a strong commitment to Europe. We need a Europe with a strong industrial policy. Anyway, I'll stop now because I've already talked for quite some time. And I don't want to steal Jeremy's time. I know that there are going to be questions for him as well. And I think he'll have very interesting answers to give as well. So, of course, I'm at your disposal, but I think Mr. Rifkin can probably answer a few questions. And then if you would like, you can hear from me again as well if you have questions.
If you have some questions, Mr. Rifkin has to leave in 30 minutes. If you have questions for Mr. Rifkin, and then with the agreement of the Commissioner, afterwards you can ask the Commissioner. So, are there any questions?
His time is more valuable than mine.
You have to take a plane. So
He's our special guest.
our special guest. He was the facilitator of the discussions. He has inspired our meeting. He's the author of the idea of the third industrial revolution. So I'm sure there are some questions for him. I see our colleague here. If you could identify yourself. And
My name is Bruno Lopez. I'm a journalist from Portugal. I have a couple of questions. The first one would be, how does this new strategy, how will the Commission define this new strategy alongside with governments? I mean, I imagine that governments have their own strategy to develop their own economies and their own markets, so how would it work? Would it be, because from your words I couldn't quite understand that.
Well, it's a question more for
I can ask
the Vice President.
I think it's better.
I can ask
Before Mr. Rifkin, then I will be here with you. But before, I think it's better to speak with Mr. Rifkin. Then Mr. Rifkin
Mr. Rifkin,
speaking, I will be with you.
most of the rich countries that have developed strong industrial bases, they started out as protectionist countries. It's a classical cycle of development.
They started as those who have developed protections.
Yes, which I suppose it's not quite the stance of the European Commission. Is it possible to have innovation and to compete with the most talented countries, which are strong countries, on the same level as them, without any kind of protectionism to latent industries or to new industries?
You may have in your packet two articles. One was my summary of my speech, and another is the relationship between the third industrial revolution, 3D printing, and the new marketing and logistics. The reason I mention this is that this third industrial revolution is going to change the whole question of protection, just like the internet has. It's going to change it fundamentally. With the third industrial revolution, we lay down the infrastructure, renewable energies, convert all your buildings to power plants, put in hydrogen and other storage technologies to store the energy, set up an electricity internet across the continent to share the electricity and plug it into your electric and fuel cell transport. The infrastructure creates a new lateral scaled economic paradigm that favors small and medium-sized enterprises working with global companies. So here's how it works. We are now democratizing information. Very cheap to send information on the internet. Now we're using IT technology and internet technology to democratize energy. And energy is going to get cheaper and cheaper with the new technologies, internet and IT technologies, to manage the renewable energies. Then this allows us to democratize manufacturing locally and marketing and logistics. 3D printing is now here. There are 200 companies doing it. You can create a physical printer and create software that will instruct molten plastic or metal to melt, and layer by layer the software can actually physically build up a product, and then it pops out of the printer. Anybody can do this. Small manufacturers can do this. What's interesting about this 3D printing is you're using IT and internet technology to democratize manufacturing, just like we're now done with information and now with energy. So that means that for a 3D printer, their process is called additive manufacturing. This is important. I grew up on subtractive manufacturing, centralized manufacturing. You have a whole hunk of material, you winnow it down, pare it down, waste a lot of it, and then you have your final product. Additive manufacturing with software allows you to layer by layer build up your product. It's additive. 1/10 of the material, 1/10 of the energy. Then if you are a mini manufacturer, an SME, or a producer co-op in a local region, and you're using 1/10 of the material, 1/10 of the energy, and then your electricity and your power source is local for your factory, your solar roof, your wind, your geothermal heat, so you are not relying on fossil fuels, the global price of oil, or nuclear power. You're generating your energy locally to produce your product. Then on sites, on internet sites, the marketing now is almost free. The small players can market on the internet with more lateral exposure than the centralized companies that use television and radio and advertising in magazines. Sites like Etsy, ETSY, 7 years. This site has brought thousands of small craft producers together. They advertise free on the site. Millions of consumers go to the site. They connect up with a craft producer anywhere in the world, and the only fee is a slight commission to Etsy when the sale is made. This young kid that founded Etsy, he called me a year ago, he made $500 million last year. So now your marketing can be nearly free. And then if you are a mini manufacturer, an SME, and you're producing for a regional market, your transport is produced locally by you, green transport, from your own site energy. So what I've just outlined to you is actually a third industrial revolution. We democratize information with the internet. Then the internet democratizes renewable energy. And then we create up a smart electricity internet to share this electricicity. And we plug it into transport. So now we can manufacture SMEs competitively with giant global companies, more competitively. And if SMEs join into producer co-ops, they can scale laterally, which means we're going to see a new chapter in manufacturing. As we head to continentalization, as the next stage of globalization and continental markets, it's going to favor thousands and thousands and thousands of continental SMEs in their regions where they're relying on their local energies, and they're then marketing and logistically transporting across their own continents. We're going to see a renaissance. As the Vice President said, we're looking for a renaissance of SMEs and producer co-ops. The large companies will not all disappear. The ones that stay will metamorphose. They will become aggregators of networks because they can aggregate networks. But this is going to be a more equal distribution of power between the big companies and the SMEs. There's room for both in this playing field. So this is a big change. And how does this affect protection? You don't need protection. When your transaction costs start to approach zero, what protection do you need? When in Europe, you can create that product for very little expense, and then you have the added advantage of developing it for a regional market without the energy cost of going across the globe. You're competitive regionally. You don't need the tariffs. You don't need the protection as much. You follow me? I know it has to phase in. But just keep this in mind. We're heading to continentalization. That is the way we globalize. And that favors third industrial revolution. It favors SMEs. It favors continental markets, and it favors continental political unions. So what the Vice President is doing here, and President Barroso, and the Commission, and the Council, and the Parliament, they're laying out now. It's taken 10 years, as the Vice President says, but now they're at the point from program to execution, and the next stage is to actually lay out a continental electricity grid, a continental energy grid, a continental transport and communication grid, the whole works, to have a continental market and mature the continental political union as an integrated space. Every continent will do that, and you really don't need, at that point, a lot of protection.
I see there is a question at the back.
Luca Bolognini, Quotidiano Nazionale. Mr. Rifkin, do you think Mitt Romney, if elected, could be an obstacle for third industrial revolution or not? And why?
Well, you know, he and I served on a board on the George Bush Sr.'s foundation, Prince of Light Foundation, the first President Bush. We served on the board of directors together years and years ago. I have never seen him since. I don't know. I don't really feel like it's interesting to me to comment at this point on that. I'm doing my work in Europe and in Asia and South America, and my fervent belief is the winds will blow back to America. And America is a little bit confused at this point. However, one thing I know about the United States of America, once we get the story, we can move very quickly. What America excels at is not so much its entrepreneurial expertise or its resources or its military power. What made America great is the ability to tell a story so vividly, to create a picture of the future so explicitly that people will give their last dollar in order to take the journey. They'll take the risk. Madison Avenue, Silicon Valley, Hollywood excels at this. So what I believe is going to happen is I think the model that's being developed here in the European Union, which is the largest economy in the world, the EU, that wind's going to blow to Asia and the Americas, and it won't be a competitive race. It's going to be the human race coming together to move us out of geopolitics and into a biosphere world. It's going to be a younger generation who's connected on the internet, who will be connected in energies, connected in ecosystems, and for them, the political boundary is the biosphere. So I believe that what Vice President Tajani is doing, the leadership of President Barroso, the European Council and Parliament, this is the story, this third industrial revolution, and I have confidence, having traveled around the world on this the last few years, that the story is being picked up in the other continents. Europe has to stay ahead of the game, though.
Okay, I think there is another question.
Well, I will ask you one question. How do you think, is it a contradiction between the idea of the third industrial revolution and the austerity measures applied by the International Monetary Fund and other international institutions?
Austerity, interesting about austerity. The financial markets say to governments, we do not trust your credit lines because you have too much government debt to GDP. We don't trust your credit. So we want to see cuts. Then governments cut. Then the credit markets come back, the financial markets say, aha, you have no plan to grow. We still don't trust you. It's a catch-22, as we say in America. Austerity, yes, but with this qualification. Not just austerity. You have to have principles in which you cut. There's waste. We all know there's waste. But there has to be principles. And the principle is, here in Europe, do not compromise the European dream, which is quality of life. It's the vision Europeans have of their future, quality of life. 2, do not undermine the social market model, which is the powerful signature of Europe. Number 3, make sure that no one is left behind. Number 4, ensure that any austerity cuts do not compromise sustainable economic development with the biosphere. Within that framework of principles, I think all of us in this room think, yeah, there can be cuts. I don't think anyone would think there should be no cuts. If there are only austerity, though, we're doomed. Because what's really happening in the world today is the second industrial revolution is dying right in front of us. It's dying over the next 40 years. 2008 was the change, as I mentioned this morning. So how do you grow a new economy around the world for the next generation when we have an energy regime that's matured, the prices keep going up, the technologies are antiquated, and the entire infrastructure made out of these fuels is now on life support? It's so simple when you look at it. We do not want to see the second industrial revolution collapse. I want to make sure we increase its efficiencies. We buy time. We have to do a careful plan in every country to wean ourselves off of an old 20th century model, old energies, old technologies, old infrastructure, and as the Vice President says, carefully invest in the new infrastructure, the new energies, the new technologies, the new infrastructure of a sunrise economic paradigm, the third industrial revolution. It's a delicate process, but it has to be done carefully but quickly. And so I think in terms of growth, yes, market reforms, labor reforms, fiscal reforms, banking reforms, there's going to be reforms. But that still is only the regulatory regime that's essential for a framework. You still have to have a new economy. You have to have a new economy. New economies are based on new infrastructures. They're based on communication energy matrices coming together. They're based on 40 years of local building across countries where you create the infrastructure for new business models. There is no replacement for that. If you want great prosperity, it always comes with a new infrastructure, a new energy communication matrix. And the moment the EU begins to invest in infrastructure, thousands and thousands of nodal infrastructures in every region, you will have jobs day one to build the infrastructure. You have to convert all your energies to renewables. You have to convert every building in Europe to a power plant. You have to put in hydrogen storage across the infrastructure. You have to completely change the electricity grid to an energy internet and completely transform logistics and transport. That will keep Europeans busy for 40 years, I guarantee you. That's millions of jobs, all domestic, thousands of SMEs. And as you lay down that infrastructure, the jobs and the businesses start day one, and the infrastructure then creates the new business models and the new economic opportunities It's a win-win. There is no substitute for this. If we want to actually create a new economic growth plan that's sustainable and can put the young people to work around the world.
Good afternoon. Andrej Matišek, Slovakia, Daily Pravda. So this concept of third industrial revolution, it seems to me it's like a paradise on earth. You even, if I got it right, you even said that the geopolitical boundaries will disappear and, I don't know, we will all sing Kumbaya. So where are the risks? Or there is no room for doubts in your theory? Thank you.
Well, I'd invite you to read my book. I have plenty of questions, and look, I'm an old guy. I've been doing this for 40 years. I'm not naive about what this takes. This third industrial revolution is a daunting task. You could have said to me, if you were a bright young reporter like you are, you could have said to me in 1900, well, Mr. Rifkin, you're up here talking about something that's going to replace the horse and buggy, and millions of people are going to have these autonomous mobile four-wheelers, and they're going to be gas pipelines and oil pipelines across entire continents, and you're going to lay out new construction of suburban housing so that people who have automobiles can travel to and from cities, and you're going to put in centralized electricity and telephone across entire continents so millions of people can talk to each other in real time on the phone. This seems like Kumbala, is that what you said? This sounds like paradise. This sounds silly, and I saw some folks saying this looks silly. You could have said the same thing when Steve Jobs created the personal computer or when the internet came along. The point is, what we've laid out here is not paradise. It's simply a practical plan to lay down some infrastructure, 5 pillars, so we can begin sharing energy like we share information, and begin to democratize manufacturing, and begin to create opportunities for the young people. So I'm not clear why that's paradise. It's a new economic paradigm. It's going to be very daunting to get there, very challenging. We may get derailed. It may not happen. But if someone has another plan, I would love to hear what it might be. I'm not saying that skeptically. I absolutely do not understand what it would be. All the businesses that I work with in our group, and we have the major logistics companies, transport, IT, electronics, construction, 125 of the big companies, we all are doing this plan. Germany is doing this plan. Go to Germany. 20% of their electricity is now green. They're heading to 35% by 2020. Pillar 2. Germany has converted 1 million buildings to your own personal power plants in the last 8 years. Yeah, that got your eye up. And they created 370,000 net jobs in Pillar 2. Pillar 3, Germany is testing hydrogen infrastructure across the country right now for storage. Pillar 4, Germany is testing the smart grid, the energy internet in 6 regions of Germany in real time as we speak. And Pillar 5, Daimler has set up an arrangement with Vattel, RWE, Dutch Shell, and they're setting up fueling stations across Germany for the introduction of the hydrogen fuel cell cars. So you might want to tell the Chancellor, who I've spent some time with, that you think maybe the plan in Germany is paradise. Voila, I don't think so. Germany created the second industrial revolution with the internal combustion engine and the Autobahn. I think we're starting to get there, and what we need is not skepticism, but as the Vice President said, we need hope. We need to take this as an opportunity. We need to understand how difficult this is. We need to understand we cannot promise the moon because that's not what this is about. But we need to also understand that this is a real possibility for the young people here to move forward and create a more sustainable and just world.
Thank you very much for this last message of hope, of optimism. And I think we are ready for Mr. Tajani, if you have questions. How is the Commission going to put in place this strategy? What are I think you had a question. Because Mr. Excuse me. Thank you very much. So I think we are ready to to continue.
Avant de répondre.
Before I answer your questions, I'd like to kindly thank all the interpreters who worked this morning or this afternoon. Thank you very much.
Je veux aussi remercier.
I'd also like to thank my Directorate General once again for their commitment and all the work they do. Not just the directors themselves or the Director General next to me, but the whole of the Directorate. There is no Spanish interpretation, I'm afraid.
Dirección General. También mi gabinete, muchas gracias a mi portavoz, Carlos Corazza, a todos los amigos que trabajan por esta reunión súper importante por todos nosotros. Un gran merci à vous tous, encore une fois, moi je peux rien faire.
Thank you, everybody. It's not possible to work if there is no team.
It's difficult to study a new industrial revolution. It's very difficult to pave the way for our companies. Thank you very much.
So we had a question from our Portuguese colleague, and then there is a lady. Could you repeat your question to Mr. Tajani? Yes, because you had asked a question before. Yeah, to repeat.
I've spoken with him for a half hour before. But because Portugal is the most important country with the European Commission, I'm ready for.
So does that give me special
treatment?
Special treatment. With Barroso.
One question.
One question. Well, what I asked was something along these lines. How will the European Commission coordinate its strategy with national governments? I mean, from what I heard this morning, it seemed to me that the European Commission has a plan that will try to influence national governments to invest in a certain way, but don't national governments know what's best for them? I mean, where do you draw the line? How will you coordinate that with national governments?
I was born in Italy. For me, the long debate is not a problem. But as you know, why today a lot of ministers in our meeting? Because it's important a good cooperation between European Commission, member states, but also with the European Parliament, all together, Commission, Council and Parliament. But during last meetings of the Competitiveness Council, every member state was in favor of industrial policy. I was also in UK. There are a lot of services. But during my meeting with the City UK, the organization of finance services in London, the leader said, we are real economy. I was in Buckingham Palace, invited by the Duke of York, by the Minister for Research, for a long debate on space policy. And one of the most important UK entrepreneurs was here today for a debate between CEO. But I am optimistic. I think it's possible to work all together. For me, the problem is not black and white. It's my Mediterranean history is a good help for me. I think it's important to speak with every country. First of all, it's important a strategy in favor of real economy. And then it's possible to back, for example, internal market and space industry in UK, automotive sector in France, in Italy, in Germany, and in Slovakia also, to back tourism in first of all in Portugal, in Italy, in Greece, in Malta. This is, I think, the strategy is a flexible strategy. For this, I think it's possible. First of all, it's important to pave the way for this strategy, and then the implementation of the strategy is not a too strict implementation. It's a flexible implementation. For me, I want to achieve the target. For this, On the industrial policy, I think it's possible to cooperate very well with every member state, no problem. Also with UK, for example, I have a good link. I will organize with the UK government in London after the second launch of Galileo satellite. Very important meeting and debate on the implementation of Galileo services in UK and in Europe. Space industry is crucial for UK in the next year. Also tourism is important. 2 pages on the Independent was incredible for me. But during my fashion industry, design is very engaged with us. In London, UK fashion industry was with us for a strong European strategy against the crisis, in favor of tourism also. I think it's important to speak and to understand what's happening in different countries. Of course, a Portugal problem is not the same German problems, Italy problems is not the same Latvia problems. I think it's possible, but to coordinate is important. The coordination is not a too strict decision. It's important. The coordination is other issue, is other problem. For this I am optimistic. I am working very well with every member state. It's important to speak, to explain also. The European Commission is not an order. I think it's a political decision with a good agreement with the Parliament and the Council. It's not easy, but it's possible to achieve the target.
I think we
need industrial policy, modern industrial policy.
We have a colleague at the back.
No referendum.
My question is also a coordination question. There seems to be somewhat of a disconnect between the plan in Europe and what you're working on, what your idea is, and what people on the ground actually see Europe as, or what they want from Europe. And I'm just wondering, communication-wise, technology-wise, information technology, have you factored that into your strategy in terms of communicating with people on the ground to let them know what your plan is, to bring them with you, more so than at national level, because there also seems to be a disconnect, at every level?
Our European construction is very complicated. The European institution was very complicated. Nobody understands what's happening in Europe, the difference between the Council, the Council of Europe, European Council, it's the same. But I am the Vice President of the European Commission, because in Italian, for example, Commission committee is the same, it's Commissione. But people ask me, but you are the Vice President of the Committee for Industry in the European Parliament. No, but I was member of the European Parliament, now I am a commissioner. Commission is minister. I understand now. Of course, it's important to communicate. You are here for this. I was journalist for 20 years. For me, communication is a priority. Because if people don't understand what's happening, it's very difficult to back Europe. Because everybody is pro-European in Europe. I think a large majority is pro-Europe. Or now a lot of people are, I don't know a majority, but a strong minority is against Europe. But people in favor, people against, don't know very well what's happening. They are against Europe because there is a crisis. No jobs. We are against voting in favor of Nazi party or Communist party, but the problem is not Stalin or Hitler. The problem is the crisis. For this, it's important to understand what's happening between our people. The communication is very important. Also, your engagement is very important, because I think it's important if the press explain very well what's happening in Europe, the good contact. When I was journalist, in Brussels, it's not important. What's happening in Rome? It's very important. Rome, Bologna, Milan, this is very important. Brussels, This is our problem. But also, I think it's important for me as Italian commissioner to speak not only with the press, not only in Brussels, not only everywhere, but in Italy, because to speak in mother tongue, it's more important, because to speak in Italian television is in Italian, and to explain what's happening in Europe, it's easier. For Ms. Logan Quinn, it's easier to speak in English or in Gaelic in your television than Commissioner Tajani, with my no good English. Is the difference, of course. For a Spanish commissioner, it's better to speak in Spanish directly to Spanish people. But it's important to work for a good communication. My general director is working for a new strategy within industrial policy for good communication. And you are here thanks to this new strategy. We want to explain to the press, and then the press is the bridge between European Commission, European institution, and the people. But now it's important to explain what's happening here, and you explain to your people. This, I think, is, of course, now the communication is not fantastic. It's important to improve this policy, to increase the number of meetings with journalists. Journalist is, for me, journalist is a friend. And not, journalists, attention please. Silence please. There are a lot of journalists here. No, very good, welcome, you are here. But the communication is very, very important. Because there are good ideas, but a lot of people don't know our ideas. A lot of confusion. Brussels, Strasbourg, which is the difference between Strasbourg and also my wife, but you are here in the parliament. But because but now I am a commissioner. Yes, he was a member of the parliament for 15 years. But this is important also in our language. We don't use the good language. Commission is a minister, but nobody knows. The European Union is, but the European Union is the Council, the Commission, the Parliament. It's complicated, but I think it's important to work well with the press. Also, by European Commission, it's important to explain what's happening here. More communication, I think, is important. But also, it's important more attention within the newspaper, within the radio, within the television. How many news in front page coming from Europe every year? All is the Eurozone is dead. Eurozone is dead. Euro is dead. Euro está enterrado. Front page. But good ideas. How many times? But for this is important, the strong cooperation between you and us. Thank you.
Very good. We have another question there.
Also in Italian. I understand very well Italian.
Ok.
Pensa che la tassa proposta dal nuovo presidente della Francia, Hollande, il 75% sul reddito eccedente il €1.000.000 possa veramente rilanciare?
I'm afraid there's no interpretation from Italian, I'm sorry. It's just French and English for interpretation.
Personally, I'm not a strong supporter of taxation, but this is my personal position. It's a national decision. The European Commission approved the taxation on financial transaction. It's a good message, but I think it's important for the taxation, proportionate taxation. Proportionate taxation.
Okay, we have another question there.
Andrea Faticati, Il Foglio. As you addressed before Germany, I'm wondering, and Germany is doing like a pioneer work now in the energetic revolution. Is there any cooperation now between Brussels and Berlin on this specific item?
I am every day in favor of cooperation with member states. Now, a new strategy in Germany, as you know, as you said, no nuclear, more alternative, more renewables energies. It's possible to work very well. It's a very industrial country, Germany. It's possible to cooperate this. But my target is for 2050, 2050. Now it's important to work well for tomorrow. Construction sector, automotive sector, tourism sector, project bond and euro bond. I know in Germany, a lot of German people are against. But the problem is without Europe for Germany, which is the future. For this, I think it's important, a long debate. It's possible to convince Germany after a long debate, because the situation is very, very clear. Without growth, it's impossible to beat the crisis. Also for Germany. I was with Angela Merkel 3 weeks ago in Berlin during a very important meeting on raw materials. I was also with Minister Rosler. They are in favor of growth, but the problem is they want reforms in other countries. But I think the position is in the middle. For Greece, it's important. Sacrifices are important. Without sacrifices for Greece, it's important to beat the crisis. But I think, in the same time, it's important to help Greece with a strong strategy for growth. For this, I say this in Italian is in the middle is better. Non è né bianco né nero, la soluzione è il grigio. Quindi bisogna trovare sempre una posizione di compromesso. The compromise, I think, is the best solution between German position and other countries' position. But Germany is not only a country. Finland, for example, is near German position. I think finally the compromise between sacrifices between our action against public debt and our action in favor of growth, I think it's possible to after the debate. Of course, every member state back his position, but I think finally the compromise is Europe will exist next year.
We have another question.
Davide Cirincione, Sky 24. Lei stamattina ha detto che già vi siete sentiti col Presidente Rani per attivare la richiesta di aiuto di fondi della Commissione europea. Giovedì la Commissione Bilancio del Parlamento discuterà fondi di solidarietà per l'Italia, ma per le alluvioni di ottobre, Liguria e Toscana. Che tempi ci sono per l'Emilia Romagna e secondo lei quanto può arrivare dall'Unione Europea per sostenere i territori?
My answer in Italian, because it's for Italian answer. No translation in French, in English. The situation is there are 1 billion euros for climate disaster every year. We are working with Mr. Errani and the Emilia region because it's important to prepare the dossier. The answer will be 2.5%, non so in inglese come si dice, del danno dimostrato.
Proven damage.
Proven damage.
The proven damage. When you justify the damage, you get 2.5%.
Because the money is the money on the budget of the European Union, the European Commission proposed to the Parliament a solution. For this, the Parliament will approve this week or the next week a good answer for region Toscana and Liguria, but no problem. I think for the final answer for the money, in Italy, 5 or 6 months. This is important to work with the dossier within the European Commission. Then the European Commission proposed to the Parliament, but the Parliament, no problem with the Parliament. But because of the budget problem is important, they vote in favor of the Parliament. But every day the Parliament, now with the new disaster today, I think it's important to increase the number of answer of Italian Emilia-Romagna region on the climate disaster.
Okay, we have still
other question.
One more question. You have more? You have time? Yes.
Last question.
Last question.
Hello, I'm Douglas Fraser from BBC in Scotland. The assumption seems to be
BBC Scotland.
BBC Scotland, yeah. The assumption seems to be that the growth industrial policy requires more centralisation with the Commission in Brussels and more directives. Are you open to persuasion that the opposite might be true, that for growth there should be fewer directives, less centralisation? And secondly, the big technology brands in the world are overwhelmingly American. Google, Facebook, Microsoft. What does Europe have to do in order to become home to the big global technology brands?
But my answer was in my speech. I'm not a strong supporter of red tape. I am against centralization. The coordination, to coordinate is not to centralize. Two verbs, to centralize is not to coordinate. I am against centralization, but I think it's better to coordinate for growth, for jobs. This is the answer. I understand very well, which is a Scottish problem. It's not the same in Galles problem or in London. I understand very well. I said during my speech, Europe is not the same, but also United States of America. If you go in Miami and you speak in English, nobody you understand. But you are in the United States of America. For this is important to coordinate with a strategy. But green economy is a good strategy for Scotland, but also for Sicily, for Malta, for my region Lazio, for Flanders. But to study new ideas for access to finance, to back small and medium enterprises, reducing the red tape is not more directive, more rules. I want to reduce the rules. We are working, we want to reduce rules. The coordination is not centralization. For this, I totally agree with you. I said, your problem is not my problem. My problem is your problem, but as Italian, as Commissioner, you understand very well. For this is important to study a strategy for 20 different member states with different 23 languages. You speak on delocalization, decentralization, but for us it's not easy to speak in English. For us it's easier. For us it's a sacrifice. I remember when during the exposition, the Cicerone said, asked to me, that it's possible to speak in English or in French? Speak in French. A lot of English people, it's very difficult for us to understand French because this is the centralization. Also the languages is centralization. But now, I think for this press conference it's better for me to speak in English with you. But my mother tongue, today, thanks to our friends and interpreters, my speech was in English. But for this, where it's important to coordinate, it's better to coordinate. But with a large autonomy, large decentralization, ¿cómo se dice?
Decentralization.
Decentralization.
La segunda pregunta era qué tiene que hacer Europa para tener Google, Facebook, para tener empresas.
I take the ITC. But I think for us it's very, very important to work in this sector. Is within our third industrial revolution. Commissioner Cruz is working. She wants to achieve this target. We want to back this sector. Also, education is important for us in this sector. In the next year, without ITC, it's impossible to work everywhere. For this, I think the work of Nelly Cruz is a good work in favor of a good European policy in this sector. This sector is within our third industrial revolution. Also for the communication is important. It's important industrial level, but also Facebook, Twitter, and ITC is crucial for our communication with the people. It's important if you want to explain to the people our ideas, our work. I think now it's crucial to utilize Facebook, Twitter, and not only the press, official press, or official television, or official radio. Also, it's important. But for this, you have also ITC newspaper, BBC online, not only on television. Is the future. For this, is crucial if you want to improve this policy in favor our competitiveness in the world.
Thank you very much, Vice President Tajani. Thank you for the questions, but don't leave because we are now going to have more specific presentations on the different topics from the colleagues. We will have presentation on standardization, innovation, and I'm sure SMEs. So I think there is the opportunity to go into more detail. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
So.